Okay, sometimes you run across a spot that's just too muddy to do much with. You can pour as much gravel as you want and it'll never solidify. This little spot here, I noticed it in walking through the area in the winter before. It's got a lot of clay underneath it. As soon as you break the surface, you'll see here when I'm digging with the backhoe, it'll start to turn to goo. So it looks not too bad right now, but as soon as I start breaking the surface, it will start to turn to very nasty mud. Technique I use, and it worked quite well in the pasture, is I set up what I call a corduroy drain. People that don't know, corduroy roads have been used in Muskeg and other areas for decades, or literally centuries. And what that entails is taking logs or some other support, laying it perpendicular to the travel of the road, and it spreads the load across the mud, allowing the road to be a little more solid. Technique I use is actually including a drain, because one of the reasons it stays muddy is there's no place for the water to go. So basically the technique is, as you can see here, is clear a trench across about the width of what you're going to use for your poles and for your drain. Of course, you want to take and put a little bit of a downhill slope on it so that it drains down away from the wet area. And right now I am just roughing out the trench to put that in. So it's not very deep. It's maybe about 8 inches deep and about maybe 4 feet wide. I'm starting from the dry end, just a little easier so I don't get the bucket filled with mud too soon. You can see it's starting to get sloppy already. I will be going back and cutting a little bit more of a pocket for the water to drain into, but I just wanted to get this done so I could get gravel on the rest of the trail. We had a fair amount of rain. It's a good reason they call this the wet coast. And it tends to soak into everything. You can see it's starting to get goopy already. See up to the upper right hand side, the little pool of water. These look a little darker. And that's where the water's pooling and where we want to pull it out of. Okay, so as you can see, it's starting to get clearer and muddier. As I'm digging too, it's just slowly turning even mushier. You can see the water's draining out of the little pool. It's a lot more than was in the little pool. It's basically what is also stored in the ground, the soil. As I'm going, you'll see me push down a little bit with the bucket too, occasionally, just to try and compact it underneath it a little bit, but right now it's pretty much mud. A bit of a root in the way here, so I'll just pull it out too. An old stump. In some particularly bad areas, especially the places in northern Canada, they use this technique of corduroy roads quite a bit to even try and establish any sort of a trail. Father was telling me stories about places where literally they built the road 3 times to try and get it to stick in some of the wetter areas. So in this case, not so bad. When you put the drain in, it helps let the soil dry out and solidify a little bit rather than being sort of the lovely mud we have here. Okay, so we're switching over to a different view. And you'll be able to see a little bit better the dimensions of the ditch and what it looks like. Taking a big clump of devil's club out of here. It's actually a skidder road that they put in about 30-40 years ago off to the be to your right. Unfortunately, it's on the neighbor's property, so it's not really an option for me to use as a trail, so I put this new one in. Now you can put multiple drains across a path if you have an area that is particularly damp. For the one across the pasture, at about every 12-14 feet, I have a drain. In that case, I use big O pipe. In this case, I'm just going to use sewer drain pipe. There's like septic field pipe. Either one works as long as you have a void for the water to get into. Now, if you're planning on using this in a full-on swamp, you may have some problems because you actually have to have a place for the water to go as well. The drain will help, but it will not alleviate all the water from an area if it's underwater. Basically, you need a place for the water to flow to. That could be a ditch or just a lower area or whatever you want. Now we may wonder why I'm doing this in the wet season. Reason for that is it makes it a whole lot easier to see where you're going to have the problem. You can second guess where it's going to get wet, but this particular case I thought it would be further up the trail, but it was actually down in this area that was showing the worst amount of water buildup. The other reason I'm doing it this time of year is I want to take and get the gravel on top of the path for the winter time, so I can use the trail by foot. I probably won't be driving the tractor over it, and also so it'll compact over the winter and force the water out. So you can see from this angle too that the soil is more or less a mud right now. What I found when I was trying to build the trail across the pasture, just even trying to drive out there to put the gravel in or fill in some of the low spots or put the drains in, you had to be careful not to get the tire or the tractor stuck, because the tires would just take and sink right up to the underbelly in this mud. You didn't have to spin them, just sit there, it would sink. You can see I'm kind of giving it a bit of a compact, but when I went to put the gravel in, it actually sunk the drain down about another, good 6 inches from where I placed it, just from the mud subsiding out of the way. Oh, here's that root again. So the trench actually looks deeper than it is in this shot. But you can see it's fairly wide, shallow. Trying to get a little slope adjustment here so that it all flows downhill. Packing it down as best you can for mud. Okay, here's the materials I'll be using. It's a chunk of old septic filled pipe, and the former owner had a whole bunch of pressure treated fence posts, which since I don't have a horse I don't need, but they will form the basis of the corduroy on either side of the drain pipe. So put the drain pipe in first. Didn't want to take and step into the ditch because I'd probably sink up to my knee. So a handy stick and we got it organized. And most people don't know this. You always want to put the holes down. Oops, not quite. So I'll grab it and flip it around. Typically the pipe will have the writing on the exact opposite side from where the drain holes are. So you always want to have the writing at the top side. And here's the pressure treated fence posts. They don't have to be in perfect shape, just you want enough to form sort of a raft. You put them up snug against the drain pipe. Sorry about that, the computer went to sleep. Anyhow, as I was saying, you put the poles on either side of the drain pipe. You can get all fancy and put all the points going the same direction, doesn't matter. Pressure treated fence posts seem to work pretty good. They're not going to rot too quick, and they're about the right size and not too large, not too small, and they're consistent in size. Here's a fancy one that's been painted. So what I do is put about 3 on either side, and that seems to provide enough protection for the drain pipe and also enough of support so that the gravel doesn't continually sink into the mud. Probably if you found you had a situation where it was even goopier, you could probably put a few more on either side, make the trench a little larger. You can see just even with that, it's bearing my weight. Okay, here's another angle. stepping into there to grab that pipe. And as I was saying, big old pipe will work, or drain pipe like this. Basically what you're looking for is just a empty space that the water can go into, because water will always flow into the point of least resistance. Yeah, it's not the best pull, but it'll work. So after I get this finished up, I'll be placing gravel in it, and then I don't know if I'll do a video. I have some more footage of laying the gravel on the trail to make it all season. It's one of the reasons out here that they don't like bicycles on hiking trails, because their tires are just perfect for chewing through that top layer, and then next thing you know, it's just a muddy mess for everybody. If you're just walking, typically the leaf debris on the top's enough to keep it dry and form a layer where it's not going to turn into a bog, but where you wear through that layer, it automatically becomes a mud pit. As you can see, me trying to wipe the mud off my shoes. Okay, now we're going to go get some gravel. Backing up. Okay, so here's the first load. Took about 3 loads. I'm using 3/4 inch road base. You can use 2-inch minus as well. You want to make sure that you pin everything down pretty good with the first load. Here's the second load. Just putting a little on the road here where there's a bit of a spot, just to make my life a little easier when I'm hauling. This area is going to be graveled over anyways. Okay, time for another load. Just back dragging it to grade it a little bit. Okay, another load into the road. Yeah, it was starting to get chewed up pretty good just from getting in and out. Okay, yeah, so just basically the same process over and over. Just go to the gravel pile, get another load of gravel, lay it down, smooth it out. Eventually when I get up to the spot where the drain is, I'll level that a bit as well, run over it with the tractor. It sank quite a bit, so it took probably about another 3 loads or bucket loads of gravel to get it to come to even, and at that point I was happy with it. It'll settle out over the winter, in which case I will put some more gravel in it in the spring, and by that time it should have solidified the mud underneath. Hope this was helpful, and we'll talk to you soon.